Yeah, I have to say, living next to a church is interesting with all those bells going off. It's very, it's a mixture between peaceful and, I don't know, ominous.
Yeah, it reminds you that death is coming.
Yeah, it reminds me that like God doesn't doesn't have a plan for me possibly, and because if I don't, then how? I mean, does he? They?
Yeah, they.
Is God? Yeah.
God.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. How you guys doing this morning?
Oh, wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the world's going exactly the way that it should.
Mm.
Everyone seems happy. There's
Mm-hmm.
harmony. There's
Mm-hmm.
development.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything. What's going on? Is something going on outside?
I don't know. I mean, I was getting ready to shop for things, and apparently everything got boarded up.
Ah, right. That makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Um, tough topic, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you guys feeling right now?
So I was in class yesterday morning and I was talking to someone and they were like, um, I'm not doing it. They were like, oh, I'm not doing enough. And they were like, oh, I've been to a protest, I've done XYZ. And then that really made me be like, fuck, I'm legitimately not doing
Mm-hmm.
like anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's why A, I think it's important to talk to on this. And then B, too, I know we were saying, Sam, if you want to come too, I think we're going to go to the protest on Saturday at Humboldt Park. I think there's supposed to be another protest out
Mm-hmm.
in, which is supposed to be, I think, pretty well organized. They're going to have like speakers and stuff like that. So I think
Yeah.
we want to do that and show support in that
It's.
way.
I
I've
feel.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I feel cowardly right now personally, because here I am like a hippy dippy type of guy who preaches all the time like I wish things were like the '60s, and in the '60s like everyone was protesting and it was like people actually cared and people stood by it, and this is the first time we're literally having that, and I have not physically done anything, so I
Yeah.
feel kind of a little bit cowardly right now personally.
Well, also just to say, this isn't the first time. There's protests like a decent amount of time, but I think to this scale for
Well,
sure.
but that's the thing, like, and I think it's a mixture of us having so much free time right now. The world is that protests do happen, but they're not, like you said, to this scale. Mostly because just like the 24-hour news cycle, and also people have jobs, so they're not able to really do this as much as they're doing it right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think as many days in a row for sure. I mean, I think the protests in Ferguson and shit, I think were just as big as this.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens. I think you're right though. I think there's more eyes on everything because people have more free time working from home
Mm.
and being able to go out because fucking what 40% of the population is unemployed or some shit. 25.
I think more.
That's
Yeah, four,
yeah.
40 million people.
Um. So yeah, I mean, what's the yeah? I don't understand. I don't know. What comes of the protest? What radical a radical change in the way that we train police officers? I mean, I think that's a good goal to have.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I guess like what I think that's something that I think a lot of people have questions about, right? Is like we go and I've had conversations with some people too, where it's like, yeah, we go into the street, we show support, and then we do this what? And this is extraordinary, right? Because this is pretty much lasting a week, maybe even longer. So let's say it ends on Sunday, and then we return to like some form of normalcy where there's now protests on a daily basis. Then what's the next step of like holding those in power accountable? How do we hold them accountable, and like what do we hold them accountable for? Like what's the goal? And by we, it's not like us three. It's like I wonder what the grand mission is of people that are either going out to support. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting question.
I've done a lot of protesting in my life,
Yeah.
and my experience has been mostly positive. I mean, I've been attacked by people who disagree with what I thought,
Yeah.
and so I have been out there. But I kind of feel the same way. I feel like I'm not doing enough, definitely. But if there is something coming up, then I'll get involved in that. So I'm not gonna beat myself up too much about not doing enough, you know,
Mm.
because I have been out in the streets and supported causes that are important to me,
Mm.
and and I do that. I guess I do that in other ways, in other parts of my life. I believe in equality for everybody, for every person, and I want that, and I want justice for people, and I want peace, and I want social equality. So, uh, I mean, so like I agree with this whole thing 100%. There's nothing about it that is, you know, so. And civil disobedience. I mean, I know I've mentioned this before, probably, but that's how change happens. You have to go out there and you have to scream for what you want in this country sometimes. And yeah, and it's happened in the past, and it's happening now, and it'll probably happen again.
Yeah.
For all types of other issues.
It's interesting what Marty said.
100% agree with it.
It's interesting what Marty said, where it's like, what is the end goal of these protests? Because I feel like that's super important, especially when you're protesting something, right? And is the only when you're dealing with something as not ambiguous, but as like intangible as racism, is what you're going to protest for is, like you said, cop reform. What are other physical things? You know what I mean? Because it's more of an ideology that I don't know, like what else, what other physical things can change from this that we can fight for right now? Because my thought is just like fucking love each other and fight for that love and fight for the recognition of equality. I don't but mine's, it sounds so astral or something, you know what I mean? That's just like, that comes with time, or it comes with people recognizing that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one step is like serving justice to the police officer that A, killed George Floyd, and then B, the ones that stood by, the police officers that stood by and did nothing. And then yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, you're right. I don't have the answer for any of this. I mean, I have some, like, I don't know, ideas about it. I mean, a positive about focusing the problem in on relations between police officers and the black community specifically, or just, I would say, just police, black, I guess, black communities specifically. Yeah, it would just be, okay, like how do officers relate to the communities that it's their, I don't know if the right word is jurisdiction, but that they patrol, right? And then two, maybe teaching more ways to de-escalate situations rather than to use force. You know what I mean? I mean, those are like two right off the bat. And then like just using, you know.
Maybe there needs to be a totally new branch of police.
Interesting.
I was reading this article that was interesting about that the police are like the answer to everything, and maybe that's the problem. Like, people just call the police for all kinds of things, and maybe it's not really always the answer to do that. So perhaps there needs to be a new branch or something something in there that offers a different solution to that. So like, you call these people, whoever they are, and they will come, and and then if it gets worse than that and it escalates, then you would call the police.
So,
wow.
Yeah, there are community organizations that you could call that will send mediators if there's ever an issue. But here's the thing, right? It's like, that is correct that they have that. However, ultimately, if there's a law and someone's breaking a law and the police are there, they have ultimate authority over some community. You know what I mean? Over like a community group, and it would just be up to whatever that group is to not call the police. But it's just like what it comes down to, at least in part, is I don't understand why. I don't understand how that. I do understand how that can happen. I just. There was something too where when I saw the video, right? It was like we're watching another human being's life taken from him, and there are three other officers standing around.
Yeah.
and one officer with his knee on the guy's neck. And, you know, and normally you see something like that. The absurdity was like revealed to me because I see that video. I'm like, God, it's terrible. It hurts for a couple seconds. And then I order Uber Eats. And then I watch a Netflix show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because it's been so natural. It's been so.
That just like took me out of reality for a second. It was like, it's strange that that is normal.
Yes.
And it's become normal.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm glad that I mean, people need to be more fired up. I need to be more fired up about it. But there's a weird numbness that I think is in like the hearts and minds of like most people. Not most, maybe most. I don't know. A lot of people in the country that look at something like that, and then it's just back to business as usual.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so like you said, Nick, right? It's like, okay, like what kind of like tangible, I would say like as far as the police force, like what behavioral augmentations can we make, and what systems of accountability can be set up within the police department when it comes to interactions like that. That's one thing. And then there's another thing too of like the culture of racism, right?
Right.
And the culture of racism is a lot more because it's hard to measure culturally what's racist and what's not racist. I would say it's harder than you know, seeing what we saw with George Floyd, and I think it would take an idiot to not believe that race played a huge part in that. You know, of the officer caring a lot less about potentially harming that individual he interacted with who was black, rather than, you know,
Yeah.
someone of another race. And then one more thing too, I think about you know I've been talking to a couple people too about like protests and rioting and things like that, and like calling certain parts of it a riot, calling certain parts of it a protest, and shutting my ass off. Right? It's like, because I talk to some people that are like, maybe the riots are just as much a part of this as the protests. Like maybe the riot, you know, and in my definition, the riot is the breaking and the looting of property, like the breaking of destruction of property, and breaking and entering into businesses. Right? That's what I'm talking about. Rioting, protesting is people on the street making their voices heard, congregating in public spaces, making speeches, stuff like that. So that's what I mean by those two. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that both are just as important as the other, or could, you know, if, you know, whatever the goal is, can the goal be reached strictly through peaceful protest, or is some rioting necessary in order to really, like, put an exclamation point on what's going on?
Personally, I'd have to read more about everything like to do with Malcolm X. I'd have to read a lot more because obviously there's probably tangential relations between what's happening now from the standpoint of the physical actions that are being taken. But I personally, from my perspective, I am currently unable to tie the correlation between these, like a riot and a peaceful protest, or like the stealing of property. And I'm wondering how much is also being influenced by people not having jobs and people being desperate for resources at this time. And if it's a tie to a general unrest in the country as well, you know?
I think a lot of it's coming from that as well.
In which case, I mean, so my city, Providence, got crazy looted. And Providence is about the size of like a 16th, and like a 32nd of Chicago. So it's
like,
tiny.
Like Lincoln Park, Lakeview.
Yeah, but it's like city. It is city.
I know. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
Right, and like there was like on I think Sunday or Monday, police car torched. There were people breaking into the Providence Place Mall or one only mall and like stealing like Swarovski or whatever it is, the jewels and shit, and like they got I think 60 of them or so. They arrested 60 so people, and they were having them go to court and such already, and the ages were from like 15 or even 14 to 55 or so. And it's wild to think that what were these kids acting on? You know what I mean? Were they just looting for the sake of it? We have this reason now, but they're 14, 15. What is their, are they confused? Are they under someone else's thumb? Like what pressures are they under, right? Because it's not a vacuum.
When I was 14 and 15, I liked destruction for the sake of destruction. I didn't really have many ideas.
I was the same way.
Sure.
Yeah. So I
Right.
think,
I was into
but
destruction in here. I wasn't
In
ever
fact,
really.
if I was in the same circumstance and I was a 14-year-old kid, I'd probably be doing the same thing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
do you? How would?
I'd just be, pissed off in every direction.
Right.
And then, of course, I'm with my friends and everything, and it's like, well, let's just do this.
How do you think they should be dealt with? People that age.
people that age,
I mean, I can't.
yeah. I don't know.
Every single person is it's different. You can't just like broadly say we have to treat them all the same because all circumstances.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm like just more interested in like, yeah, I'm more interested in, I would say just like adults that think it's necessary. Because here's my thought. This is kind of why I asked the question, right? It's like, okay, if I would assume that the belief of some that are rioting, according to the definition that I gave, would say this. They'd say like these businesses are just as much of the problem as racism because these businesses are a product of or a consequence of capitalism, and it's a consequence of consumerism, and capitalism and consumerism are inherently tied into colonialism. Colonialism is tied into racism.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that would be some of the rioters' justification of I'll break into this fucking Target, tear the whole fucking
I'm
Target
owed
down.
this.
Is it like a physical structure? This is a physical manifestation, like of the system that I'm fighting, which also includes a system that perpetuates racism.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. I get that that's their argument. I don't know if I agree with it, but I feel like that's their argument. And there's a part of me that's like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, that's what, yeah, tear that shit down. And the other side too, though, then I saw in the news yesterday a guy that I think owned a liquor store or like a restaurant, and people broke into that, right? Not the gun thing.
No, not that one. Okay.
They were interviewing him, and they looted his place. It was a restaurant or a liquor store, and he was crying. He's crying, and he's like, I worked really hard to own my own business, and now it's destroyed. And it's a small business. That's where, and I feel like no matter what side you're on, shit starts to collide.
Yeah.
Of like, you know what I mean?
There's lots of stories like that.
Yeah.
All over the city of small businesses struck, just like that. Yeah, it's happening.
It's like is a guy that owns a struggling small business really part of like the overarching problem? Maybe you could probably make an argument that they are. Guy, girl, you get what I mean?
Sure. They're pursuing capitalism like everybody else. So I guess you're right.
Wow, yeah.
About an individual owning a small business, supporting their family, them putting in decades of work into owning something. Something about that makes me feel that it's not right to destroy that at all.
I agree.
Right? So then what's the distinction then? If it's like a multinational corporation, it's okay to break it?
Right. If you had like a small business in a Nike store,
Nike store?
Right.
Yeah.
How do you? I don't know. How do we accept one and
Right.
the other?
You know what I mean? Like, would you look at and what if it's like a really successful small business? Then is it okay? But then it's like, well, why is that okay?
Yeah, where's the
You know what
line?
I mean? Like,
Maybe this is what maybe this is technique conversations that we need to have. We need to force ourselves into rethinking, like, well, where's the line?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the same thing goes for racism. Why is some forms acceptable and some are not? So definitely.
I would say, would you mean
you guys know what I do? All of the things that I support and things that I want to see in my reality. I wish for a peaceful world and a just and socially equal world. So, and for everybody. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard to watch this. It's hard to see the way that we're treated still.
Yeah. I personally have been incredibly miserable this past week. It was weird because the 5 of us now just moved into a house together, including Marty, and we moved Friday, so obviously this had happened before this instance, but I didn't personally have time to focus up, so I was kind of playing catch up into everything, especially we're like, all right, let's focus on moving, get all this shit in, and then all of a sudden it goes from like 0 to 100 of like what is happening on this world, and let me catch up and make sure I'm aware of everything, and it just it's hanging on me like a weight that I I'm trying to write about it and like let like my feelings so I'm not like living in my head about it, but I think that's why we have to go to a protest, right? Is because that's the only way where it's like you're with other people who are feeling just like you, except they're turning that despair into hope, right?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
yeah, and again, that's not the only thing you. That's not the only thing you can do. I think it's a good thing to do. Um, again, it's just the question always comes back to when this simmers down, right? So I think of it like this. When like you're really, really anxious, sometimes you can get like a bad rash.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then you could like treat the rash with ointment, and then the rash goes away. But if you're still really anxious, the rash is gonna come back in like a month or two.
Mm-hmm.
This is the rash. This is the rash coming to the surface, and then we can put ointment on it and weather the storm. Like not weather the storm. Not weather the storm as in like let's just have all this go away and go back to normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like those that don't want things to change, their perspective would be let's weather this storm. Let's like just put ointment on the rash and chill for a little bit. Let's let everybody kind of protest, get their anger out, and then return back to normal life in like a couple weeks. You know? And then if there's no follow up to these demonstrations, then the rash is gonna come back in a month or two. You know what I mean? And what we've seen, at least since I've been an adult, is we're
Breakouts.
breaking out periodically, and this is a pretty big breakout, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't address the underlying causes of the breakout, then
It's interesting too, because not to go deeper into the analogy, but breakouts are also from your body fighting the infections normally. So this is us literally fighting this infection, right? And it's got to get worse a little bit before it gets better, and hopefully not too many more times worse, because this has happened too often now.
yeah, man. I do see the point of. I see the point of some that would say, let's fucking make it bad. Let's make it real fucking bad to get everybody's head going. You know what I mean?
I mean, everyone's paying attention now, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're paying attention, but like we said, we're paying attention, but like I said, more attention could be paid. Definitely.
Hmm.
And again, there's a difference between a bunch of people paying attention and, like we said, implementing some sort of plan to like structurally fix.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at something all you want and understand it, but if you don't do anything about it, that's great. You can write a fucking paper on it, but that doesn't do anything in the real world. You know what I mean?
What other actionable things are there besides protesting, you think? I know some people are donating, and that's something I want to do. What else is there?
I mean, my go-to is always, passing legislation that would like hold, police officers even more accountable for if these things happen again. That's one. Drastic reform of the way that we train police officers would be another. Raising the bar on the minimum of what you need when we're choosing officers. I think they've already done this, but like having people that are more integral to the community or look like the people in the community.
True, that's always a big thing.
Those are like 5 things. At the end of the day, I don't think that this is ever going to completely stop. I mean, people will die. That's life, you know. Like,
Do you think that I don't know how, maybe you can speak to this because your dad's a police officer, but are there many police officers who have taken psychology classes or like have handled like you know what I mean, some type of psyche thing?
Not really.
It's more like all, not to label every officer, but is it all more brawn or like problem solving skill? I don't know. Obviously they have great problem solving skills, a lot of them, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, there's, all you need, I'm pretty certain, is an associate's degree in order to get in on the bottom floor. And I'm pretty sure the bottom floor is a patrolman. And the patrolmen are the people that drive the cars around the neighborhoods. I'm pretty sure all you need is an associate's degree. I think. I actually might be wrong about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure my dad joined the force when he was 21. You can join, the earliest
Wow.
you can join is 21. I'm pretty sure. It might have changed since then, because my dad was 21 in like 81. But, I don't even know. You might only need a high school degree, to be honest. Because I'm pretty sure my dad left high school, worked at UPS for like 3 years, and then joined the police force with like a high school degree.
I'm looking for the
In
requirements.
order to get up and get certain promotions and set yourself up to rise in the ranks, you definitely need. I mean, my dad has like a bachelor's, and then I think like the police chief has masters, and some. I don't think. I don't. Some may have doctorates. I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't say you need a bachelor's degree, but you need some college credits.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it could be an associate's.
Yeah,
It could be
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who go to community college to get their associate's degree with like no death. What's your thought?
Well, my thought's this, man. I know plenty of fucking dipshits that have doctorates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not, you know.
Dipshits
like,
in which way?
just
Not in their
like,
field. Dipshit in their head, like in a different arena.
I think both.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's this. It's like build a program that's highly specific to the issues that officers will face in the field.
Right.
Like that should be part of the academy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like go to a community college, take some courses in the history of Western Civ.
Right.
And read Mark Twain. And
Right. Well, I was gonna say like some people go not even knowing what they're gonna do.
Because those skills aren't applicable to the things that you're going to be doing. Just like the same way, if I'm going to be a mechanic, I don't need to read Heidegger. It doesn't make sense. It just, and that's not, and then the reverse is true too. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be really, if you want to like write essays on philosophy, you don't necessarily know how to change a tire. And that's not saying that one is more important than the other. That's just the facts. You don't need certain skills for certain things.
What type of practices do you think could be instituted in training to help real world situations?
I would say some sort of psychology courses, techniques about mediation and de-escalation. Which again, and this is the thing about our podcast. We don't do any research, so everything I'm saying could be part of the program.
It could already be there.
But either way, then fucking make it better, because a lot of people aren't fucking doing it. Too many people aren't doing it. And again, I know there's idiots. We say this a lot, right? There's idiots in every field, but the stakes are so high. You know, if you're working at a McDonald's and your fucking boss is an asshole, it's like your interaction with the customer and you get their burger wrong is much different than if you fuck up as a police officer, you kill someone. You know, like those things are both fuck ups, but the stakes are the highest of stakes.
I mean, you could even go this far. You could say that create a new position, you know, and you have a representative that goes out on some of these calls, and this is your diversity representative. And if there's something like this comes up, that person is with the police force and they're there for that issue, so that some of these things are goes on a call or something like that. I mean, maybe that's what you need.
I mean, how many of those do you get though? Then, right? Because I mean, you'd need a lot of them, right? Creates a job.
You know, and this person could have that education, and they're there, and that's what they're supposed to do. And if the cops are doing something, I mean, of course, there's a gray area because you can't tell, you know. But you see what I'm saying? It could be a type of representative could be there. Alleviate the situation. I'm not saying that they're going to tell the cops what to do, but at least us as citizens would feel at least a little bit better that there's like someone there.
And hopefully it's not just an optics thing, because it could turn into that, you know.
No, but
I mean, there's no way to know how that's going to be effective, but at the very least, that's a way to say, here's a solution that we have. This representative, this person is going out on these calls with these people, you know, like I don't know how police things are divided, but precinct or something, like there's one representative for each area or something.
issue
from that maybe too.
I mean, from one precinct, here's the thing about that would be, I like the idea of getting a community, I think this could work, getting a community leader, getting a group of community leaders from that community to ride with patrolmen and be with them for when they interact with and be with the the patrolmen when they go on calls, then you would have to have an equal number of those community leaders as patrolmen in that community. Every day, they would have to be working on the same shifts. Because my thing is, like, if you have one leader from everything, they're going on calls all day, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, one guy in an office or just hopping in on one ride-along, there's still 4 other ones going on at the same, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, that
I mean, I gotta imagine. Sorry, I gotta. Hmm.
yeah.
I mean, it could be as simple as like, okay, you at the protest, you care about this issue, and maybe what we need is we need you out there. Wear a bulletproof vest or something. And,
Right.
pay
But
the
we
person
also.
to go out there and do it. And I think even just the presence of that person and the knowledge of it in that particular community would have a significant impact. Just that they know that person is there. You know what I mean? So that could, I don't know. That's my idea.
But the weight can't fall on that one person, obviously, right?
It's one idea. What's that?
The weight can't. Sorry, I interrupted. The weight can't fall on that one person, though. Obviously, it's still like a mutual effort amongst the entire team, right? Like I imagine if there has to obviously be training when you're in the police academy for shooting. And if you're not handling a gun properly, or if you're like not doing what you need to do to pass that, you won't become a cop, or they send you backwards, right? I imagine. So, this has got to exist already, but maybe it's not good. But you have to do the same thing with dealing with people in tense situations. We should probably do more research if no one responds to us. But
Well, yeah, I mean, responding in tense situations is always the precursor to drawing your gun. And here's the other thing too: is like, you know, there's also a vast difference between training for something and being in the situation. And there needs to be some sort of way to address that, right? So I can hit my heavy bag as much as I want, and if I'm in a box,
but it's not a person. Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is way different. I just got punched in the face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's that. And then too, I want to pivot a little bit as well, just as far as like some of the work that I've done in the past. We've like employed like these circles. So in communities, when there's violence between 2 groups of people, right? And there's the one that killed, and there's the one who was killed. We've gotten like the families of the 2 together to talk out what happened, right? And so like what that does is hopefully try to end the cyclical nature of the violence, right? And so and then we got a community leader to like be in that discussion as well, you know? And like this works in whatever neighborhood that there's a lot of violence happening in, right? So that's an example of like trying to end violence in general from like the ground floor between the members of the community, rather than having to appeal to calling the police when there's an issue. Right. I mean, when there's a shooting, the police there's a lot of times called, but then again, so you know, and there's arguments to be made that sending someone away to jail isn't necessarily justice. But let's like put that in parentheses real quick. Let's say so justice is served, the one who killed is in prison. You know, then what? Right? Well, it's like, well, let's get the fucking families together. If there's let's get the families together from the 2 respective people, and let's talk about how to fucking end this. You know, so that
postmortems.
Then the guy who killed cousin doesn't go kill the guy who killed his brother.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And again, this will never be perfect. It never will.
We're just looking to.
It'll never be perfect. There's always people that are gonna hurt. Bottom line. But if we're moving in a direction towards non-violence, then that's ultimately the right direction to be moving. And can we move faster? Fucking right we can. But,
right.
You know?
Do you think some cops are also skittish from the perspective of like, I believe Floyd was on fentanyl, or that they thought they found it in his system or something? Do you think there's a lot of fear, or perhaps ignorance or naivete in cops that don't necessarily understand how to handle people who could be on narcotics, and are treating any person who's on a narcotic as a criminal already? And that's just because that's the way our justice system treats narcotics, is like that they're not addicts to this thing that sometimes they're powerless to, a lot of times. And so do you think that because someone's on a narcotic, they might be deemed not impractical, but like they could do anything, you know what I mean? Like they're unpredictable, that's the word. Do you think that they're not trained enough for that?
Yeah, but I would say that like research would support that if you're on a narcotic, you are in fact more unpredictable.
Sure, sure.
So I don't necessarily. Again, now they're more unpredictable. That doesn't mean that the right course of action would be to kill the person.
Mm-hmm.
The right course of action would be to like, if they broke up, would be to detain them and hopefully get them in some sort of program to help them.
Right.
But in that moment, and I would say this, and not it's not to play devil's advocate, but I would say that police officers would say to us, you guys are naive to think that, like, we've seen a lot of shit of a guy on fucking meth that started stabbing people
Sure.
and fucking this.
Sure.
So,
Do you think? Do you think?
and again, that doesn't mean that if they're not physically harming someone, that doesn't mean that gives you the right to harm them.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is that if,
Yeah, I see the thing here. It's like maybe they're just responding to, they're treating everybody the same. So, to a certain, and I'm not saying that that's right, but maybe that's why they're doing that. Someone is, whatever wherever you're at on the spectrum of intoxication, they're going to treat everybody the same.
Mm. Do you think
violence has to end?
Yes.
That's what needs to happen.
Do you think cops need to?
From the root, then that will cleanse all everything else. It starts with violence.
It does. Do you think cops need to approach people who are on narcotics in a more, like, almost like, I picture it the way, like, I don't know what group goes after bombs, but like when they don't know like something's a bomb or something, do they approach it? They approach it with like, was it tenacity, I guess, or whatever? Like that, you know what I mean? Do we approach it that way? Do we have to go very like a little bit more tiptoeing around it? I don't know. What is?
Well, here's the thing, man. Like, if you're, I'm a little confused about the question only because, like, here's a couple things. One, I would say, again, I would just like the qualifier of like some. You know what I mean? Because there are some police officers that do their job well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Generally speaking, it's like, I guess, like, what do you mean? Like, if you're high, if one is high, right? Like,
Yeah.
And they're not committing a crime and they're just sitting there. I guess, like, what do you mean? I guess, yeah.
I'm curious. I'm just wondering.
You will be treated differently than if you're
Right.
That's nothing to do with George Floyd.
Right.
It didn't seem like from the videos, it didn't seem like he was acting erratically
No.
whatsoever. This
No.
is like a separate issue.
Right, but I'm wondering if, like, you see maybe he was exhibiting signs, I don't know, this is, maybe he's exhibiting, a person's exhibiting signs of being high of some sort, and it's not like weed, it's like, they seem like they're fucking glazed over, they could have fentanyl, they could have opioid in their system. Perhaps not with opioid, and maybe it's more really related to meth that they're gonna, behave erratically, but if you're unsure how they could behave, should you go in a little bit more methodically and just in case they could exhibit ridiculous
Are you asking me if I was a cop?
I'm wondering, like, should cops be a little bit more like they're treating this person as if they were a bomb that was about to go off because they don't understand how this person's going to react if they behave in a certain way. I think that's my question, and I'm not doing a good job of explaining it.
I would say that they're trained to do that. Now, whether they do that, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, there's, I would assume. It's not even an assumption. Again, I guess I have to ask my dad a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and you just take drugs out of it for the equation too. If someone's flailing their arms around, if someone breaks into a house and they come into the house, you will be treated differently if you turn around and go, "You caught me," than if you flail your arms around. And I think that that's the right way to handle that.
But do you think?
So, yeah,
Curious.
If they're on drugs and they're flailing their arms around, then yeah, you're gonna treat that differently. And also, at the end of the day, it's like, listen, like, let's take the example of like of someone that just broke into the house. You come in, they're flailing their arms, right? I don't support any sort of police violence unless it's absolutely necessary. By absolutely necessary, it means that their lives are at risk because the person that they're trying to detain has the opportunity
Mm.
or has the intention of and is reflecting their intention through their behavior of killing the police officer. At the end of the day, man, there's something very human about you're in a place and they're fearing for their lives as well. In this example.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not the George Floyd thing. They didn't have any reason to fear their life. He wasn't armed. He wasn't reaching for shit. But that's separate. So, yeah.
Sorry, I was just someone's talking to us on Instagram Live, and he was wondering, do you think there could ever be, and maybe this exists in maybe more small rural towns, like is there volunteer police officers, like kind of like volunteer firemen?
I don't know.
It,
There's I thought the version of that would be a
neighborhood watch, I guess, because his idea was more like you have concerned citizens, which is a neighborhood watch again, who are volunteering to help their community, obviously. But are there more? First of all, I think these people would have to. I don't know if that's possible because like you have to be trained in such a way that like would you be a lesser cop? You know what I mean to other cops if you were a volunteer cop? Like you would have to have. I don't know. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
I think this.
I mean, I don't know if that would be possible. Not to lessen anyone's job description here, but I think you could be a volunteer firefighter and be a part of the team and help them extinguish a fire, but you're not there to regulate a dispute between two married couples.
Mm.
So I think that maybe the training is a little different. Does it exist? Not that I'm aware of, but maybe it does.
I mean,
I think Sam's idea that he mentioned earlier would cover exactly whatever.
Right. Yeah. You're right. You're right.
That's what I said earlier.
A community leader that rides along, and the community leader is trained. Because here's the thing, too, right? Somebody could volunteer for that, and if there's no training on how to mediate between two individuals that are having a dispute, that extra person could make things worse.
Does that person need to even ride along, though?
That's like gung-ho about, like, I want to help, and he shows up, he's like, hey, guys, hey, you stop it. He loses his cool, and then it's just another, it's the equivalency of a police officer.
Does that person have to ride along? They could be back at, like, the precinct or something, and with technology these days... Well, no, it wouldn't be that. It would be... I'm talking more Sam's thing.
Yeah, Sam's thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my idea, we're talking about a guy man or woman, doesn't have to be, sorry, a person, a person on payroll that is qualified, wearing a bulletproof vest, the whole thing, and it's just the presence there. This representative, this diversity representative, or something like that, so that at least that's there. I'm not saying they're going on every single call with these people. I think the presence in that person, and it could be, I don't know, someone elected from the community, or
and they have to have like a master's in psychology or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's some qualifications that go along with that.
I see. Here's the thing, man. I don't know why we're so focused. I've met so many good people that do great work that don't have a master's in shit. You know what I mean? Like you can set up a really good training for individuals in a community that might not even have a high school degree or do have a high school degree that could go to the training and then understand de-escalation techniques.
I agree.
And I would say that they might not go on every call in that community.
So remove the qualifications. You're right. All those degrees and stuff, they don't mean shit. They really don't. I mean, they're good for certain positions, but maybe not for this one.
Sure.
Okay. You got a good point there.
Because it's going to ostracise people from it.
They're going to have to do something with the police, and while they're working their way through that, you're absolutely right.
Too, right? If we were to implement this plan, and this is in an underprivileged community, an underserved community, right? Who the fuck from the underserved community, realistically,
has
going to be so much less of a pool of people to choose from that have their masters, instead of the fucking lady that owns the local grocery store that fucking knows everybody and everybody loves and respects. Fucking put her in the car. She can show the fuck up. And maybe some people will stop fucking, maybe the police will stop hurting her community. Maybe the community will stop hurting each other. You know what I mean? I'd take her over some fucking stuffy motherfucker any day.
I agree with you.
So I've read some theory that said, punch that guy in the fucking face.
Yeah. That's
Well,
super interesting.
so that,
Do you,
We solved it.
we solved it.
yeah, I mean,
Call the protests off.
ultimately, the way, so move all those things out of the way, but ultimately the idea still stands that someone should be there.
Yeah.
Payroll, part of the police, yeah. So they don't necessarily have to have all that shit. But I think I said that because that's what people expect. And not that it's a good thing, but I mean, that's just from other people, you know. But I don't know. Maybe I don't think it's necessary either. But
I would even say not on the police payroll. It's a separate entity set up. Again, I mean,
Like a moderate. Yeah.
it'd be hard. I mean, I guess by the government, but then there's a whole issue of like, well, if the government's the problem, if they're paid by the government, what's the issue? But I almost would like it better if they're not paid. You know, like they don't have to necessarily answer to the chief, but it's almost like they work in conjunction with the people.
Could they be like appointed by like mayors or
I guess
something?
what I'm getting at is like it's a paid position.
Well, no, not, but you know what I mean. Not, maybe not a mayor, but by someone in a certain like someone who knows the community. You know what I mean?
It should be voted for by the people in the community.
That's
And I
cool.
think it should be given. The alderman should give the blessing. Like the smaller and more local we make it, I think the better.
Yeah, I agree.
Do it. Yeah, an elected person. Yeah, elected. Definitely hold an election for this person. But I guess what I'm getting at doesn't matter where the money comes from, but it's a paid position, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. So.
Side note, and not.
Taking it like a volunteer thing.
Side note, not to be. Well, wait. What's it get paid? What's it? The who also gets voted for? It's the not attorney general. It's the It's like a cop type of person. I forget the name. Anyway, I think they do. I think this person would be paid. I mean, they're also doing a hard job, right?
They should definitely get paid.
They're dealing with cops
Police officers
and
like
people.
the amount of time that a police officer has a shift for sure.
Right. Side note, not to be thinking about like making money from this at all, but like more from a storytelling. Do you think this could be an interesting television show? Instead of a cop show, it just focuses on this person who is like the cool and collected person and has to deal with all these situations, dealing with cops, dealing with like the community saying like, because you're also gonna have people being like, oh, you're working with cops now, and they're like, no, 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 like I am for the community. Could that be an interesting premise?
Right. So yeah, that boils down to the argument of like, do you create change from the inside, working with the structures that already exist, or
Mm-hmm.
do you create a structure outside?
Mm.
That's what that.
Mm. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be like a really interesting story for sure.
No, but I mean, like what you just said, the idea of like working from is it better to work from the inside with a structure that's already founded and help make that structure stronger, or be an external force that tries to put the structure in a place where it can change, I guess.
That has to be something because
Well-
I don't know if anyone's had any experience on the mechanism of any government bureaucratic institution, but nothing happens.
Mm.
So yes, absolutely has to be
Mm.
something totally.
Interesting.
I don't know. I think of it. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. I like to think in analogies, and it's like if you're already good, if there's positives of a thing that exists, if you can add something into that thing or to do alongside that thing to draw out the positives and decrease the negatives, I do think that that's easier than completely
Re-upping, like.
everything has positives and negatives
Mm.
and trying to work from the ground up to create something that has more positives than negatives. I
Mm-hmm.
know that was all like abstract and weird, but
No, no, no. I do. I understand that premise for sure.
you know, well, there's plenty of people that disagree with that. There's plenty of people that think that like no, it's baked into the cake that the entire thing is fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no positive, and the only positives that we see, you know, the negatives far outweigh the positives, and it's a waste of time to even try to bring out the positives, because it's ultimately a losing cause.
Mm-hmm. By the way, that position I was speaking of is sheriffs. Sheriffs are elected, and I think it's more smaller places, but it could be everywhere. I forget.
Yeah, actually, no, you're right too. I'm pretty sure chiefs are too, because I know someone. Yeah, there was chiefs are appointed by the mayors of the town, at least in Berlin.
Interesting.
That might be. I'm pretty sure that probably be a statewide thing or whatever.
And you know what's wild is if this person, this position we just created, if they're not doing a good job, they could be elected. They could be, someone else could be elected to do the position, and like it's super interesting.
Cycle,
Hmm.
2-year election cycle.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, diversity representative or something. I mean, it's a bad title, but something.
I would just say the community leader and mediator.
Yeah.
The thing too is like, why? I mean, is it more important in neighborhoods where the police that are patrolling look not like the people that they're
For sure.
in the area that they're
Oh
patrolling?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's much more important. But this could work everywhere.
Also, I mean, think of a.
Another neighborhood. Like, oh yeah, I know the intricacies of that person. Like, I know the intricacies and the dynamics of those people a lot more than you do because like they ran a barbecue at my place, you know, something like shit like that. Those little. And again, just to bring back, man, just the humanization too, right? There's one would be less inclined to kill someone if they're riding in a car with someone who says, "Oh, I know that guy's mom." So,
Wow.
little shit like that makes a big difference.
It's almost like being the mayor. It's almost like being qualified to be the mayor, but you're only qualified in like the social aspects or something. From a perspective, obviously they probably have other qualifications that are good for other things, but they're not like that's super interesting.
Well, also, like talking about helping the community, if you've got someone that lives there and lives in the neighborhood, lives in the community, I mean, some people that patrol that neighborhood may not even live there, may not know these people.
Yeah.
So they don't care.
It adds the story.
It affects the community.
Wow. I mean, that's not going to fix everything, but that is a really interesting start. I'm probably going to try to do some research and see if that exists anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it already. Shit, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
it exists, but is it going to be the best solution? No, but at least it's going to move it in the right direction.
It could step it and make way for a better position.
It does, as far as I know, it doesn't exist. I mean, it does not exist that they're right along with the police. There are organizations that again help with mediation once a crime has been committed, and then the families, because I've worked with those groups, so that exists. A, B, and some of this exists to an extent that's not like it's not an organization, it's not codified, and there's no system about it. I had a professor at school who like he is like the for Blackwood, but like he is the leader of his community, and when shit goes down, they call him. He shows up, and he talks to a lot of the time. It's like young men that are like that are committing violence against each other. He'll show the fuck up. He's like the fucking community elder, and he's like, stop, and they listen.
Wow.
That shit already happens to an extent. Like, let's fucking make that shit happen more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it won't, and you know, and it's a high risk because there will be mediators that will show up and say stop, and they'll fucking die. You know, but are you willing to put your life on the line for that shit? You know, to try to help fucking create.
If it's your community, you are probably right.
Yeah.
To a degree.
There are some, and let's like fucking put those people on a pedestal, because that's the direction we should be going.
I love that. That gives me a lot of hope, just talking about that.
Yeah, put somebody in there, man.
So if you're watching and you want to be the community leader representative, give the American Stream a call, and we'll get you right in there. We'll codify it. We'll get it going.
Yeah, a world without violence is a world without violence.
I know.
That's mine.
Tell me about it.
Other than if it's two parties agree and it's some sort of ring or octagon, it's like third.
I don't know. What a world. I know I'm sweating from that.
Yeah?
Well, it's hot. I don't think we have our air on.
It's hot. My room's hot as shit. But when I get going, I sweat too.
I think I have a call. Do you want to take a call coming in?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me put it on speaker.
About 5-6 minutes.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, I was just calling in because I wanted to be part of this civic duty police thing you guys were talking about.
Cool.
Hey.
Welcome to the program.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, well, what do you guys recommend I do when I want to, do this job?
Oh. In Warwick?
Maybe, yeah, sure. I guess Warwick would be fine.
So this is someone calling from Rhode Island. He's interested in doing a job. What could he do to get qualified for it, you think?
this doesn't exist. But yeah, I mean, like we said, I mean, hopefully we would set up some sort of like system where you would go through some sort of training for mediation and de-escalation. You know, and that would hopefully, I think that should be at least like a couple months. You know, and then pass some sort of test. I think also what would be advantageous would be field work as well. That'd be part of it. So you're in the classroom, and then you also go on like you do some field work where you like observe. Also, you get a feel for like when you show up in a tense situation. Again, the difference between studying in a classroom and actually being in the moment. That part of the process of like getting some sort of certification or license. And then if you pass all that stuff, then you're ready to rock and roll. I think also too, though, I think you'd have to be elected, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that it should just be a volunteer thing. I think you'd have to like make some sort of like campaign.
Super interesting though. So, if you need to be elected, do you do the training beforehand, and then we just have a pool of people who could possibly be elected because they've done the training?
That's a
Yeah,
good
it'd be a process. It would be a process, yeah.
That's super
And I
interesting.
think also to add to that, you might have some social justice background, protesting something.
Yeah, I think too, and maybe this is a good. I'm glad you called in because this is kind of like revealing some holes in what we're saying. I mean, maybe it could be good. Yeah, I mean, if one is willing to go through that training, is it necessary? Maybe you can go through the training and then you have to get voted in. You know, you might have to get a percentage of voting in order to actually do the work. You know what I mean? Because then you get into a thing where it's like this person might not necessarily be the community leader, but if they have if they're popular for other reasons, people might vote them in, and they might not be the best person for the role. But if you go through, I think it could be good to have them go through the entire training before the vote, just to show their dedication.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Brendan?
Sorry, I really couldn't hear. She was cut off a little bit right there. Can you just maybe elaborate what you just said?
Did you hear any of it?
No, I didn't hear any of it.
Well, essentially, basically, you'd go through a training, and then we were wondering if the training has to happen before you get elected, and then I think you would have to have some type of background of protest, of social justice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I really like that idea, and I like the option maybe of like the ride along or the technological ride along that you guys are talking about, which was I mean, it's just like all great ideas I think you guys were talking about. I'll leave you guys be, but I actually did have like a legitimate thing to kind of just like throw out there, and like, you know, maybe I'll get a little hate for it, but I just also wanted to say, you know, there is a militarization of police, and you know, the government and the Pentagon fund the police to an extent, but there is a culture of you know, cop culture that, you know, is very much built up on being aggressive and escalating. And I mean, I wasn't saying all cops are like that, but I was, you know, saying that I think it's been like that for quite some time, even like, you know, from the beginning of the country, you know, where they're just crackheads and protect, you know, our quote-unquote oligarchy and all of that stuff. And I was just wondering if you guys could maybe expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's another thing too, where like the distinction we made too between like what mechanisms of accountability that would change behavior but also changing culture. I think that kind of
right.
I think what you're saying like is a lot about. I mean, you use the word culture. So yeah, I mean, I think that again, a top-down approach of setting up mechanisms to like augment behavior would be one way to address that. And then culturally too, I think that if we were to implement this system of having a mediator ride along, hopefully, if they see that that is working, maybe that would decrease the amount of like macho aggression culture that exists in the department. But that's a really big question, and I think you're right for fucking bringing that up, because that's a huge part too, right? You can put as many systems in place as you want, but if the police officers don't believe in it, you know what I mean? And that you know, the cultural pressures or like the ethos of toughness is ingrained in
Thank you, Grain Powerful.
is ingrained in the police department, then yeah, that would be tough. So that's good. We have to wrap up in a second here.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk
Yeah, thank you so much for calling in, Brendan.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thank you.
All right, love you.
Thank you.
Love you. Bye.
Good friends.
That kind of goes into what I was saying earlier. You know, what he brought up is like, I believe that the presence of this person would have a significant impact as well. Which is what you were saying, Marty. Is just them being there, whoever this person is, would really have a positive impact and really change a lot of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is really, I feel in a better position right now in my mind. This is beautiful.
Yeah, can't lose hope.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hit the streets next, right?
Huh?
Next thing? We're gonna hit the streets next.
Yeah.
Yes,
Next.
Start campaigning for this job.
We'll be on tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thanks for everybody who's listening. We did forget to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but we'll get to that tomorrow.
We will. We will.
First thing we'll do tomorrow is do that.
9 a.m. All right. Peace, America.